welcome back to Emerald Lake. I can't hear myself. Come on, headphones. Hello, there I am. Natsu, that's adorable. I'm loving your niece more and more. Ouch. Adjusting things, sorry. Okay. Hi, Millennial Echo. Hello, everybody. Alright, so earlier today we did a spoopy story. We were getting through some of the stories in Iker Falls, but now we're back to the stories in our fairy tale book. Last week we had just about finished the green fairy tale book. So tonight I'm expecting we're going to dip into the red fairy tale book. After we finish the red fairy tale book, it's the oh my gosh, my brain. I got distracted by info about the niece smiling very big. I have to focus. After this one, it's the after the red fairy tale book, which we'll be breaking into tonight, it'll be the Grimm's stories. So there you go. Hi, Bridget. Hi, Tetra. And konbanwa, little niece over with Natsu. So what am I thinking? Oh, yes. So I have these stories prepped, but next week I'm not going to be reading the fairy tales. I've decided solidly that I'll be doing, at least at the start, other stories mixed in. So we had recommended bedtime stories. I have some poetry stuff that I was going to read, and then the other half of the streams for next week will be origami hand cams again. We'll get back to those. I'm trying to remember what someone recommended for sound. On Throne, I have a couple of things that I'm hoping to get. One of the paper guillotine for Tirna Og, I considered poetry, so it's actually on the list for the poetry. Natsu, that's one of them. So I got the paper guillotine that I was thinking for one of the sounds we don't have to get, but that's up there for when we get to the origami, like I had planned, so that I don't have just piles and piles of paper that I drown in, because I could never escape if I make them all into cranes and such. I want to get mortar and pestle to safely burn the little paper into the pestle, and then I can ground it up and then get rid of the dust afterwards, but the ashes. But that's what I was planning for that one. I originally planned to be filming videos for YouTube for how-tos earlier, but chaos struck this last week, as you kind of saw me not doing all the streams. So I'm going to have to film those as soon as I can. But we'll be doing that soon. Sakuna, I'd win. Hi, welcome. Thank you for the follow. I'm doing good. I hope you're doing well too. Yes. So, hi, Mad Max. And the Raven focus. Clearly, I'm already distracted again. So those are all the things that I was thinking about for all of these streams and such. That's the what's on the docket for the next little while. She watches my VODs all the time. I hope not the ones that are inappropriate, but it does help to have the language barrier, I guess. And as long as you're in charge of that, as long as you're making sure she's not watching the bad stuff, then I'll trust you. That's why she gets a pass, is because she's got an over 18 person as a chaperone. Raven needs to turn into a Ford and focus. No, never a Ford. That's just a weird little thing in the back of my head. You don't go with Fords. I couldn't even tell you where it comes from. Somebody made that a thing at some point, and it's never left me. The ASMR one's only cool. And then, yeah, so unfollows. No, Frigid, no. I told you I don't know where it comes from even. It's just a thing in the back of my head. Um, but probably somewhere along the line, I have someone that bugged someone else about owning Fords, and like I don't even know why. You know, Miles whips a Ford Focus. I don't know how to follow that sentence. My brain's not on it enough right now. But okay, so we've done all of the chaotic little ramp up and getting distracted. um. Oh, I'm glad you thought it was glad you thought it was funny. It's a time. I will say, I've been thinking of doing other gaming streams. The problem is the right games for my being able to stream. Someone else, if the people have given me suggestions for games, I'm gonna say don't. Because here's the trouble. I'm gonna start feeling very guilty that I can't do those games. I do not have a lot of RAM available for this. I'm already running a couple of layers of stuff, so running something through Steam is already a problem. So I have to do browser gaming. That is the rule. It has to be browser gaming. Apple one is fine if I'm supposed to pick. Okay, Sakuna. Download more. Thanks, Bridget. Thank you. But that's what I've got. Masked Justice, just dropping in to say hi. Probably too EP to stick around. Oh, alright, well, go sleeps whenever you can. So yeah, I want to do sober gaming, different games, other things. But I'm glad that I did that because the first Tipsy Stream game, we got new people in, and so I want to keep trying some of these other forms to keep bringing new people in. But yeah, that's the amount of dedicated wham for Minecraft. Sova. I don't know. Just posted a Ford Focus meme. Great. I'll check it out probably after the stream, honestly, because if I have too many tabs open, if you think I can't focus at this point, and I limit myself, I don't allow myself to have anything that's not actively stream related as best I can. You can use all games in the Game Pass. Website, 0 downloads. I know what those words mean individually. There's a video for a while back, don't worry about it. Oh, okay. Okay, eep time. Alright, Master Justice. Go sleep. Good night. Oh, no, Natsu, you can go sleeps too. It's all good. Okay. Well, mayhaps, but this is kind of why I was like, maybe just don't do any recommendations. Another layer is, I've got other things that I should probably focus on, other promises I haven't quite yet delivered upon, so we're going to focus on those. But those are some of those things that it's in the back of my mind somewhere. It's not gone, it's there, it's just not quite in the front there. Okay. Let's read. Let's do stories. We just have 2 more stories for the end. Oh no, you're okay. You're okay. You're new here, especially. You don't know how how bad I am at this. But the stories. Yes, there was 2 more stories before the next book. We've been going through these. We're not even done the fairy tales section of this. I wonder if we're ever gonna get through all of these stories. There's so many. Somewhere over ravens. I don't know what those words are. Where was I? Yeah, so then there's that, and then nose. Oh. Okay. Oh, I'm so ready for that one. Okay. Fancy name for something in the brain. Okay. Let me just. No. just this bit. What? Did I change something? Ah! Okay. You're making me get further distracted, but deal with it. Did you mean medulla oblongata? Haha. You say the wrong word in the chat. I'm not the dummy. But obviously Google knows what you mean, so it's fine. Somewhere over my brainstem. Hello. I'm consistently distracted. Oh, and yeah, the last thing, I meant to say this a while ago. Sakuna, I do my redeems in between stories, but once I get started, the last couple stories in the book aren't very long. I just keep getting distracted. I usually am a bit better about getting started. I've just been awful about it this particular evening. So I'm going to get started. Sleep is important for your health, and falling asleep to ASMR is considered a compliment to many ASMR streamers. It is. But obviously I don't blame you for wanting to stay either. I can't spiel. It's okay. It's all good. I mean, I would argue that there are worse in the chat than you, for sure. No, read the bookies. Okay. The bookies. Yes. Alright. So the first story. Here we are. I'm setting the things up. No, we're not doing that anymore. It still has singing frog from last time. The first story is The Three Musicians. And I'll tell you this, the first few stories, it's a bunch of counting, it's a bunch of numbers in the title, so it's kind of silly. There's a little bit of a theme. But alright, I'll settle in. For the first story, The Three Musicians, second to last story of the Green Fairy book. Whoa. Settle in. Yes. So, Natsu, if you gotta go, it's all good. If niece falls asleep to this, that's cool. If not, because I doubt, then go, deal, have fun, sleep, whatever's. No worries. I need to stop scrolling through Facebook before I get distracted. Dash. No, that's good. I'll get distracted too. No dragons in any of these yet. No Natsu in any of these yet. But there is a whole section where we could end up with more dragons soon. We haven't got there. Alright, here we are. The Three Musicians. Once upon a time, 3 musicians left their home and set out on their travels. They had all learnt music from the same master, and they determined to stick together and to seek their fortune in foreign lands. They wandered merrily from place to place and made quite a good living, and were much appreciated by everyone who heard them play. Then go sleep, Sakuna. Go sleep. One evening they came to a village where they delighted all the company with their beautiful music. At last they ceased playing and began to eat and drink and listen to the talk that was going on around them. They heard all the gossip of the place, and many wonderful things were related and discussed. At last the conversation fell on a castle in the neighborhood, about which many strange and marvelous things were told. One person said that hidden treasure was to be found there, another that the richest food was always to be had there, although the castle was uninhabited, and a third that an evil spirit dwelt within the walls, so terrible that anyone who forced his way into the castle came out of it more dead than alive. As soon as the 3 musicians were alone in their bedroom, they agreed to go and examine the mysterious castle, and, if possible, to find and carry away the hidden treasure. So they took the first understanding. They determined, too, to make the attempt separately, one after the other, according to age, and they settled that a whole day was to be given to each adventurer in which to try his luck. So, screw teamwork. I'm the one that gets the treasure, or you are. None. We don't split this shit. Okay. Okay. The fiddler was the first to set out on his adventures, and did so in the best of spirits and full of courage. When he reached the castle, he found the outer gate open, quite as if he were an expected guest. But no sooner had he stepped across the entry than the heavy door closed behind him with a bang, and was bolted with a huge iron bar, exactly as if a sentinel were doing his office and keeping watch, but no human being was to be seen anywhere. I'm interrupting this just to say that, we had a while ago one of these. There's a spooky castle. If you live in it long enough or you go adventuring, you'll get the treasure. But it was all uninhabited, but everything happens magically kind of thing. And that's a whole trope. These kinds of stories, the couple of these that exist, really got held on to for older sitcom moments, and it's so silly to see it again. Yes, all you people that have been up too late, go to bed or settle in while you listen and lurk. Go sleep. We all need sleeps. Okay. Alright. An awful terror overcame the fiddler, but it was hopeless to think of turning back or of standing still, and the hopes of finding gold and other treasures gave him strength and courage to force his way further into the castle. Upstairs and downstairs he wandered, through lofty halls, splendid rooms, and lovely little boudoirs. Everything was beautifully arranged, and all kept in the most perfect order. But the silence of death reigned everywhere, and no living thing, not even a fly, was to be seen. Notwithstanding, the youth felt his spirits return to him when he entered the lower regions of the castle, for in the kitchen the most tempting and delicious food was spread out. Oh, I guess rumor number 2 was accurate. The cellars were full of the most costly wine, and the storeroom crammed with pots of every sort of jam you can imagine. A cheerful fire was burning in the kitchen, before which a roast was being basted by unseen hands, and all kinds of vegetables and other dainty dishes were being prepared in the like manner. Before the fiddler had come to think, he was ushered into a little room by invisible hands, and there a table was spread for him with all the delicious food he had seen cooking in the kitchen. No, lurkers and headpads. Alright. The youth first seized his fiddle and played a beautiful air on it which echoed through the silent halls, and then he fell to and began to eat a hearty meal. Before long, however, the door opened and a tiny man stepped into the room, not more than 3 feet high, clothed in a dressing gown, and with a small wrinkled face, and a grey beard which reached down to the silver buckles of his shoes. And the little man sat down beside the fiddler and shared his meal. When they got to the game course, the fiddler handed the dwarf a knife and fork, and begged him to help himself first, and then to pass the dish on. The little creature nodded, but helped himself so clumsily that he dropped the piece of meat he had carved on to the floor. The good-natured fiddler bent down to pick it up, but in the twinkling of an eye the little man had jumped onto his back and beat him till he was black and blue all over his head and body. At last, when the fiddler was nearly dead, the little wretch left off, and shoved the poor fellow out of the iron gate which he had entered in such good spirits a few hours before. The fresh air revived him a little, and in a short time he was able to stagger with aching limbs back to the inn where his companions were staying. It was night when he reached the place, and the other two musicians were fast asleep. The next morning they were much astonished at finding the fiddler in bed beside them, and overwhelmed him with questions, but their friend hid his back and face and answered them very shortly, saying, "Go there yourselves and see what's to be seen. It is a ticklish manner, that I can assure you." Well, come on. Wait, I'm in the story. Oh, never mind. I'm 3'6". If you really were, I would love to hear any notes you have on how many times they make these little dwarf comments in these stories. It's something that can be deeply annoying, and sometimes they have nice storylines for them, but like it makes me curious. This pisses me off though, specifically that they're like, he got beat up and then he's like, "Go there yourself," just to be like they're gonna get beat up too. No notes on how to get better, no notes on how to do better for next time. They're not gonna share. Could you guys not have gone as a team? Again, I'm just a little annoyed by that. Why? Sorry, Mike. My lips were starting to stick together. I need a chapstick. Okay. I wish they would be cooperating. I do. Now you're 5'7". Okay. The second musician, who was a trumpeter, now made his way to the castle, and everything happened to him exactly as it had to the fiddler. And if the fiddler had not been a selfish little asshole, they would have been able to get a better situation, or maybe get some info out of this little man. Hey, nice Riz. Good job. Who got the 110? Who got the max again? Wasn't that long ago, but someone got the max number. My instinct says it was like a turtle boy. I think it was. I don't know. Aw. Not great love tonight, sorry. Bots. Okay. Everything happened to the trumpeter exactly as it happened to the fiddler. Good news is at least each of our musicians are nice people. It's something. Oh, 96. That's pretty good. Rose. Oh, still not great numbers. Bots be mad. Oh, only 25%. Sorry. Okay. So everything happened the same way. Ooh, nice, Bridget. He was just as hospitably entertained at first, and then just as cruelly beaten and belabored, so that next morning he too lay in his bed like a wounded hare. You're fine, Nancy. You guys did well with your rizzes. You did good. Assuring his friends that the task of getting into the haunted castle was no enviable one. Notwithstanding the warning of his companions, okay, so they did warn him. The third musician, who played the flute, was still determined to try his luck. Okay, so they did this time give him a warning. Alright, but did they give him actual info or just say, like, it's not fun? Like, okay. Anyway, he was still determined to try his luck, and full of courage and daring, he set out, resolved, if possible, to find and secure the hidden treasure. Fearlessly he wandered the whole castle, and as he roamed through the splendid empty apartments, he thought to himself how nice it would be to live there always, especially with a full larder and cellar at his disposal. Hey, you 71% love yourself. It's pretty good. It's better than a lot of people can do. Be real. Okay. He'd like to live there all the time, he's thinking. A table was spread for him too, and when he had wandered about for some time, singing and playing the flute, he sat down as his companions had done, prepared to enjoy the delicious food that was spread out in front of him. Then the little man with the beard entered as before and seated himself beside the flute player, who wasn't the least startled at his appearance, but chatted away to him as if he had known him all his life. But he didn't find his companion very communicative. At last they came to the game, and as usual the little man let his piece fall on the ground. The flute player was good-naturedly just going to pick it up when he perceived that the little dwarf was in the act of springing on his back. Then he turned round sharply, and seizing the little creature by his beard, he gave him such a shaking that he tore his beard out. Oh, ow! And the dwarf sank, groaning on the ground. Yeah, I imagine. Aw, see, Sakuna does not love themselves. Sorry. the bot has declared. Okay, but we've stopped the dwarf this time. But as soon as the youth had the beard in his hands, he felt so strong that he was fit for anything, and he perceived all sorts of things in the castle that he had not noticed before. Ooh, magic hair story, magic hair story. But on the other hand, all strength seemed to have gone from the little man. He whined and sobbed out, "Give, oh give me my beard again, and I will instruct you in all the magic art that surrounds this castle, and will help you carry off the hidden treasure, which will make you rich and happy forever." But the cunning flute player replied, "I will give you back your beard, but you must first help me as you have promised to do. Till you have done so, I don't let your beard out of my hands." Good. He was already a very wily little dude, so don't trust him. Yeah. Then the old man found himself obliged to fulfill his promise, though he had no intention of doing so, and had only desired to get his beard back. He made the youth follow him through the dark secret passages, underground vaults, and grey rocks, till at last they came to an open field, which looked as if it belonged to a more beautiful world than ours. Then they came to a stream of rushing water, but the little man drew out a wand and touched the waves, whereupon the waters parted and stood still, and the two crossed the river with dry feet. And how beautiful everything on the other side was! Lovely green paths leading through woods and fields covered with flowers, birds with gold and silver feathers singing on the trees, lovely butterflies and glittering beetles fluttered and crawled about, and dear little beasts hid in the bushes and hedges. The sky above them was not blue, but like rays of pure gold, and the stars looked twice their usual size, and far more brilliant than on our earth. The youth grew more and more astonished when the little grey man led him into a castle far bigger and more splendid than the one they had left. Here too the deepest silence reigned. They wandered all through the castle, and came at last to a room in the middle of which stood a bed hung all round with heavy curtains. Over the bed hung a bird's cage, and the bird inside it was singing beautiful songs into the silent space. The little grey man lifted the curtains from the bed and beckoned the youth to approach. On the rich silk cushions embroidered with gold, a lovely maiden lay sleeping. She was as beautiful as an angel, with golden hair which fell in curls over her marble shoulders, and a diamond crown sparkled on her forehead. But a sleep as of death held her in its spell, and no noise seemed able to waken the sleeper. Oh boy. That's just the cooldown. I think there's cooldowns on each of the things and such. Meowth. I didn't even recognize that it was Meowth till you said that. It was too small. There he is. I have to hover over him to see him all big. Dancing Meowth. Ah! I can hear his little sarcastic voice already. Okay, sorry. There's a pretty girl, of course. All right. Yes. Then the little man turned to the wondering youth and said, "See, here is the sleeping child. She is a mighty princess. This splendid castle and this enchanted land are hers, but for hundreds of years she has slept this magic sleep, and during all that time no human being has been able to find their way here. I alone have kept guard over her, and have gone daily to my own castle to get food, and to beat the greedy gold seekers who force their way into my dwelling. Well, I mean, the gate opens like you ask them to go in, but okay, forced their way in. I have watched over the princess carefully all these years, and saw that no stranger came near her. But all my magic power lay in my beard, and now that you have taken it away, I am helpless, and can no longer hold the beautiful princess in her enchanted sleep, but am forced to reveal my treasured secret to you. So set to work and do as I tell you. Take the bird which hangs over the princess's head, and which, by its song, sang her into this enchanted sleep, a song which it has to continue ever since. Take it and kill it, and cut its little heart out, and burn it to a powder, and then put it into the princess's mouth, when she will instantly awaken, and will bestow on you her heart and hand, her kingdom and castle, and all her treasures. Why do we have to kill and then cut out the heart and then burn it to ash and then put the ash in her face? Weird steps, but okay. Poor Burbia. The little dwarf paused, quite worn out, and the youth did not wait long to do his bidding. He did all he was told, carefully and promptly, and having cut the little bird's heart out, he proceeded to make it into a powder. No sooner had he placed it in the princess's mouth than she opened her lovely eyes, and looking up into the happy youth's face, she kissed him tenderly, thanked him for freeing her from her magic sleep, and promised to be his wife. Well, okay. Fried chicken is the cure. I think it's a little extra fried in this case. It's charred. Okay, sleepy time. Okay, good night. Go sleeps. Fried chicken is the cure. I got the disease. That's a good one, Bridget. Okay. She promised to be his wife. At the same moment, a sound as of thunder was heard all over the castle, and on all the staircases and in every room sounds were to be heard. Then a troop of servants, male and female, flocked into the apartment where the happy couple sat, and after wishing the princess and her bridegroom joy, they dispersed all over the castle to their different occupations. But the little grey dwarf now to demand his beard again from the youth, for in his wicked heart he was determined to make an end of all their happiness. He knew that if only his beard were once more on his chin, he would be able to do what he liked with them all. But the clever flute player was quite a match for the little man in cunning, and said, "All right, you needn't be afraid. You shall get your beard back before we part. But you must allow my bride and me to accompany you a bit on your homeward way." The dwarf could not refuse this request, and so they all went together through the beautiful green paths and flowery meadows, and came at last to the river which flowed 4 miles round the princess's land and formed the boundary of her kingdom. There was no bridge or ferry boat to be seen anywhere, and it was impossible to get over to the other side, for the boldest swimmer would not have dared to brave the fierce current and roaring waters. Then how did they get in? Just a little plot hole. How did they do that then? Then the youth said to the dwarf, "Oh, the wand, right, okay. Give me your wand in order that I may part the waves." And the dwarf was forced to do so, as he was told, because the youth still kept his beard from him. But the wicked little creature chuckled with joy and thought to himself, "The foolish youth will hand me my beard as soon as we have crossed the river, and then my power will return, and I will seize my wand and prevent them both ever returning to their beautiful country." But the dwarf's wicked intentions were doomed to disappointment. Simple, they jumped. It was impossible for the dwarf to go because his legs were too small, but the people that were taller had plenty of ability to jump the river. Is that what you're saying? Okay, he's doomed to disappointment. The happy youth struck the water with his wand, and the waves at once parted and stood still, and the dwarf went on in front and crossed the stream. No sooner had he done so than the waters closed behind him, and the youth and his lovely bride stood safe on the other side. Then they threw his beard to the old man across the river, but they kept his wand, so that the wicked dwarf could never again enter their kingdom. So the happy couple returned to their castle and lived there in peace and plenty forever after. But the other two musicians waited in vain for the return of their companion, and when he never came they said, "Ah, he's gone to play the flute," till the saying passed into a proverb, and was always said of anyone who set out to perform a task from which he never returned. I've never heard of that. Have you? Has anyone heard of the proverb off or gone to play the flute as someone that's left and not able to come back? I guess it's somewhat similar to went to go get milk or something, but different context and why they left maybe. But yeah, no, I'm consistently mad from the start that the musicians had no loyalty to each other and no wish to help each other out. But okay, I guess that's that. I can't say you have. Yeah, I certainly haven't. Interesting proverb. Well, now the more you know, I guess. Redeems time now, I suppose. I'll rearrange myself. Okay, that was a quick hydrate. Now we'll do some typing. I think Sakuna may have already gone to bed, but I will go ahead and type on the little keypad. Okay, here we go. Alright, that was our typing, and I realized I never put that up. That just kept saying, now reading. It never said that it was typing, but we're gonna do keys next, so I'll put that up at least. Yes, thank you for the follow. I always say the name, so here you go. Thank you for the follow, Clip Pamper Cutie. Thanks for joining. Obviously, we've already got Cage loving that username. I enjoy it too. Next, though, we're doing redeems, and then we'll go into our next story, because we just finished one. And clip it and ship it, boys and girls. Okay. Now we're gonna do keys, as Turtle Boy requested. So, here we go. And there were our keys. Hi, Ghost Rider. Alright, if there's no other redeems, then we would move on to the next story. The next one, as I kind of said before, is more counting. So, it's called The Three Dogs. So we had the three musicians, now the three dogs, and then we would be wrapping up the green fairy book, and then we'll move on to the red fairy book right after that. But that's it. Okay. Since no one's saying any more redeems, that's that. We'll move on. Alrighty, here we go. The Three Dogs. There was, once upon a time, a shepherd who had two children, a son and a daughter. When he was on his deathbed, he turned to them and said, "I have nothing to leave you but 3 sheep and a small house. Divide them between you as you like, but don't quarrel over them, whatever you do." When the shepherd was dead, the brother asked his sister which she would like best, the sheep or the little house. When she had chosen the house, he said, "Then I'll take the sheep and go out to seek my fortune in the wide world. I don't see why I shouldn't be as lucky as many another who has set out on the same search, and it wasn't for nothing that I was born on a Sunday." Okay. I know that that's an old saying, but I couldn't tell you what it means. That it wasn't for nothing that I was born on a Sunday. I have read/heard it before. I don't know which. I do know I know it, but I couldn't tell you what. And so he started on his travels, driving his 3 sheep in front of him, and for a long time it seemed as if fortune didn't mean to favor him at all. One day he was sitting disconsolately at a crossroad, when a man suddenly appeared before him with 3 black dogs, each one bigger than the other. It says "holo" as opposed to "hello." It's spelt with a U. "Holo, my fine fellow," said the man. "I see you have 3 fat sheep. I'll tell you what. If you'll give them to me, I'll give you my 3 dogs." In spite of his sadness, the youth smiled and replied, "What would I do with your dogs? My sheep at least feed themselves, but I should have to find food for the dogs." "My dogs are not like other dogs," said the traveler. "They will feed you instead of you them, and will make your fortune. The smallest one is called Salt, and will bring you food whenever you wish. The second is called Pepper, and will tear anyone to pieces who offers to hurt you. And the great big strong one is called Mustard, and is so powerful that it will break iron or steel with its teeth." The shepherd at last let himself be persuaded, and gave the stranger his sheep. In order to test the truth of his statement about the dogs, he said at once, "Salt, I am hungry." And before the words were out of his mouth, the dog had disappeared, and returned in a few minutes with a large basket full of the most delicious food. Then the youth congratulated himself on the bargain he had made, and continued his journey in the best of spirits. Why did the man want the sheep and not his awesome dogs? I don't understand. But okay. One day he met a carriage and pair, all draped in black. Even the horses were covered with black trappings, and the coachman was clothed in crape from top to toe. Inside the carriage sat a beautiful girl in a black dress, crying bitterly. The horses advanced slowly and mournfully, with their heads bent on the ground. "Coachman, what's the meaning of all this?" asked the shepherd. Is he really a shepherd? He hasn't got any sheep. But okay. I would say like the shepherd's son, because that man was anyway. At first the coachman didn't say anything, but when the youth pressed him, he told him that a huge dragon, dwelt in the neighborhood and required yearly the sacrifice of a beautiful maiden. This year the lot had befallen the king's daughter, and the whole country was filled with woe and lamentation in consequence. Sorry. A bit of kerfuffling. The shepherd felt very sorry for the lovely maiden, and determined to follow the carriage. In a little it halted at the foot of a high mountain. The girl got out and walked slowly and sadly to meet her terrible fate. The coachman perceived that the shepherd wished to follow her, and warned him not to do so if he valued his life. But the shepherd wouldn't listen to his advice. When they had climbed about halfway up the hill, they saw a terrible-looking monster with the body of a snake and huge wings and claws coming towards them, breathing forth flames of fire and preparing to seize its victim. Then the shepherd called, "Pepper, come to the rescue." And the second dog set upon the dragon, and after a fierce struggle, bit it so sharply on the neck that the monster rolled over, and in a few moments breathed its last. Then the dog ate up the body, all except its 2 front teeth, which the shepherd picked up and put in his pocket. The princess was quite overcome with terror and joy, and fell fainting at the feet of her deliverer. When she recovered her consciousness, she begged the shepherd to return with her to her father, who would reward him richly. But the youth answered that he wanted to see something of the world, and that when he would return again in 3 years, and nothing would make him change his resolve. The princess seated herself once more in her carriage, and bidding each other farewell, she and the shepherd separated, she to return home, and he to see the world. Just seeing that tetrahedron. Sorry, I've gotten used to saying just tetra that I stumbled. Yeah, dragon, but it's already gone. We already got rid of it. Sorry. The doggos did it. So he's left. But while the princess was driving over a bridge, the carriage suddenly stood still, and the coachman turned round to her and said, "Your deliverer has gone, and doesn't thank you for your gratitude. It would be nice of you to make a poor fellow happy. Therefore you may tell your father that it was I who slew the dragon, and if you refuse to, I will throw you into the river, and no one will be any the wiser, for they will think the dragon has devoured you." Oh my gosh, the coachman's an asshole. Okay. I mean, like, he's just trying to get what he can, but, like, you asked that. It's just not. Okay. The maiden was in a dreadful state when she heard these words, but there was nothing for her to do but to swear that she would give out the coachman as her deliverer, and not to divulge the secret to anyone. So they returned to the capital, and everyone was delighted when they saw the princess had returned unharmed. The black flags were taken down from all the palace towers and gay-colored ones put up in their place, which I know they mean just brightly colored, but that just makes me think it's specifically the gay pride flags, and I mean, those would be considered brightly colored ones. So that's pretty accurate. But anyway, and the king embraced his daughter and her supposed rescuer with tears of joy, and turning to the coachman, he said, "You have not only saved the life of my child, but you have also freed the country from a terrible scourge. Therefore it is only fitting that you should be richly rewarded. Take, therefore, my daughter for your wife, but as she is still so young, do not let the marriage be celebrated for another year." Nani, yes. Good timing then. Okay, so she's got a year before she's got to deal with that marriage, and another couple years before she would have her actual rescuer return. All right. The coachman thanked the king for his graciousness, and was then led away to be richly dressed and instructed in all the arts and graces that befitted his new position. But the poor princess wept bitterly, though she did not dare to confide her grief to anyone. When the year was over, she begged so hard for another year's respite that it was granted to her. But this year passed also, and she threw herself at her father's feet, and begged so piteously for one more year that the king's heart was melted, and he yielded to her request. So much to the princess's joy, for she knew that her real deliverer would appear at the end of the 3rd year. And so the year passed away like the other 2, and the wedding day was fixed, and all the people were prepared to feast and make merry. But on the wedding day it happened that a stranger came to the town with 3 black dogs. He was asked what the meaning of all the feasting and fuss was. And they told him that the king's daughter was just going to be married to the man who had slain the terrible dragon. The stranger at once denounced the coachman as a liar, but no one would listen to him, and he was seized and thrown into a cell with iron doors. While he was lying on his straw pallet, pondering mournfully on his fate, he thought he heard the low whining of his dogs outside. Then an idea dawned on him, and he called out as loudly as he could, "Mustard, come to my help!" And in a second he saw the paws of the biggest dog at the window of his cell, and before he could count 2, the creature had bitten through the iron bars and stood beside him. Then they both let themselves out of the prison by the window, and the poor youth was free once more, though he felt very sad when he thought that another was to enjoy the reward that rightfully belonged to him. He felt hungry too, so he called his dog Salt and asked him to bring home some food. The faithful creature trotted off and soon returned with a table napkin full of the most delicious food, and the napkin itself was embroidered with a kingly crown. The king had just seated himself at the wedding feast with all his court when the dog appeared and licked the princess's hand in an appealing manner. With a joyful start she recognized the beast, and bound her own table napkin round his neck. Then she plucked up her courage and told her father the whole story. The king at once sent a servant to follow the dog, and in a short time the stranger was led into the king's presence. The former coachman grew as white as a sheet when he saw the shepherd, and falling on his knees begged for mercy and pardon. The princess recognized her deliverer at once, and did not need the proof of the 2 dragon's teeth which he drew from his pocket. The coachman was thrown into a dark dungeon, and the shepherd took his place at the princess's side, and this time you may be sure she did not beg for the wedding to be put off. The young couple lived for some time in great peace and happiness, when suddenly, one day, the former shepherd bethought himself of his poor sister and expressed a wish to see her again, and to let her share in his good fortune. So they sent a carriage to fetch her, and soon she arrived at the court, and found herself once more in her brother's arms. Then one of the dogs spoke and said, "Our task is done. You have no more need of us. We only waited to see that you did not forget your sister in your prosperity." Aw. And with these words, the 3 dogs became 3 birds, and flew away into the heavens. Aw, that's cute. And then the end. That was the 3 dogs. And that is the end of the Green Fairy Book, which was the Andrew Lang collection of stories published in 1892, but does not mean that those stories were written in 1892. The next story book is the Red Fairy Book. And this one was published a couple years before that, I guess. I need to double check that these are not the ones that I've already read, because I guess I could have. Let me go back. No, this should be a new one. Woohoo. Oh, I've done this out of order. I will have to fix that later. But okay. The next one is 12 Dancing Princesses. And it's a long one, so we're going to be breaking in between. Let's see, how many of these little sections is there? 16. And it's partially French at the bottom. Okay. Okay. There's short sections, I will give it that, but there is 16 sections. Okay. Oof. I'm going to take a short break to set up before that, so in the little break, hit up the redeems if you want redeems, or just say next story. So we'll do this. Boop. And I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back and I see the dice is first up. So we'll do that. We'll set up for that one. Alright. Ready to do. Dice. Okay. It's been a lot of dice tonight. But I'm not mad. Here we go. Okay, that one rolled too far away. That's not fair. I'm not picking it up. No. Okay, you're still sick. I'm sorry you're sick. I hope you feel better soon too. Oh. The last die I will pick up not now. Okay. Humming. It is indeed, which is exactly what Cage says, of course. Yes. Get out of here. Alright. Brain, what were we doing? Other songs. Yes, okay, Brain. Alright, now mic arm sharpening sound. This one has quickly become a favorite because it's an alternative to properly knife sharpening. Alright. Sorry for the weird little extra noises. I was trying to find out where's the best place to kind of have the mic maneuvered for that, because I'm not sure. And then my headphones every once in a while decide to stop actually feeding the sound to me. So I had to adjust things and double check. But alright, that was the mic arm sharpening. And now we'll move on to the next story, I guess. We'll start in on the Red Fairy book. Whoop whoop. The 12 dancing princesses. There we go. Hello, Rat Gaming 15. Welcome. That's a good name. Yes, drop the rat emojis. Or rap emote. That's the words here. Did I do? Alright, and then I do that. Okay. Already at the Red Fairy book. This is also great. I've been doing enough streams to have read all those stories. Nuts. Okay. So there's 16 little chapters to this, and I'll probably take a break after the 8th to let people do redeems again. If you drop redeems now, that's when I'll do them. Yes, little rat emotes. Dropped them in for our rat friend. Okay. Here we go. Part 1. Once upon a time there lived in the village of Montigny-sur-Roc, a little cowboy without either father or mother. Now I'm a little uncertain. It is spelled cow-boy, and I don't know for sure if this means he's a cowboy or a cow boy, like our weird little hedgehog child. So, but I'm gonna assume it's a normal cowboy. Just old days. I don't know. Okay, so he's a little cowboy without father or mother. His real name was Michael, but he was always called the Stargazer because when he drove his cows, there you go, he is a cowboy, over the commons to seek for pasture, he went along with his head in the air, gaping at nothing. As he had a white skin, blue eyes, and hair that curled all over his head, the village girls used to cry after him, "Well, Stargazer, what are you doing?" And Michael would answer, "Oh, nothing," and go on his way without even turning to look at them. Why do we care what he looked like for that? I don't see how any of that fed into the other pieces of that, but okay. The fact was, he thought them very ugly. Rude, Michael. With their sunburnt necks, their great red hands, their coarse petticoats, and their wooden shoes. He had heard that somewhere in the world there were girls whose necks were white and whose hands were small, who were always dressed in the finest silks and laces and were called princesses. And while his companions round the fire saw nothing in the flames but common everyday fancies, he dreamed that he had the happiness to marry a princess. Okay, so he's a classist. That's what I'm reading. He. Fun. But okay. 2. One morning about the middle of August, just at midday when the sun was hottest, Michael ate his dinner, a piece of dry bread, and went to sleep under an oak. And while he slept, he dreamt that there appeared before him a beautiful lady, dressed in a robe of cloth of gold, who said to him, "Go to the castle of Benoil." I'm sure that there's a different way to say the collection of vowels that there is here, but this is the way I'm reading it. I don't know. Okay. Go to the castle of Benoil, and there you shall marry a princess. That evening the little cowboy, who had been thinking a great deal about the advice of the lady in the golden dress, told his dream to the farm people. But as was natural, they only laughed at the Stargazer. The next day, at the same hour, he went to sleep again under the same tree. The lady appeared to him a second time, and said, "Go to the castle of Belle-Isle, and you shall marry a princess." In the evening, Michael told his friends that he had dreamed the same dream again, but they only laughed at him more than before. "Never mind," he thought to himself. "If the lady appears to me a third time, I will do as she tells me." The following day, to the great astonishment of all the village, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a voice was heard singing, "Rally-o, how the cattle go." It was the little cowboy driving his herd back to the byre. The farmer began to scold him furiously, but he answered quietly, "I am going away," made his clothes into a bundle, said goodbye to all his friends, and boldly set out to seek his fortunes. There was great excitement through all the village, and on top of the hill the people stood holding their sides with laughing, as they watched the Stargazer trudging bravely along the valley with his bundle at the end of his stick. It was enough to make anyone laugh, certainly. Okay. 3. It was well known for full 20 miles round that there lived in the castle of Belle-Isle 12 princesses of wonderful beauty. And as proud as they were beautiful, and who were besides so very sensitive and of such truly royal blood that they would have felt at once the presence of a pea in their beds, even if the mattresses had been laid over it. And yea, it was whispered about that they led exactly the lives that princesses ought to lead, sleeping far into the morning, and never getting up till midday. They had 12 beds all in the same room. But what was very extraordinary was the fact that though they were locked in by triple bolts, every morning their satin shoes were found worn into holes. I'm very confused. So every night their shoes, even though they're locked into their bedroom, their shoes were worn all the way through. I mean, it does say that it was satin shoes. Maybe they're not the most sturdy. But okay. When they were asked what they had been doing all night, they always answered that they had been asleep, and, indeed, no noise was ever heard in the room. Yet the shoes could not wear themselves out alone. At last the Duke of Belloil ordered the trumpet to be sounded, and a proclamation to be made that whomever could discover how his daughters wore out their shoes should choose one of them for his wife. On hearing the proclamation, a number of princes arrived at the castle to try their luck. They watched all night behind the open door of the princesses, but when the morning came they had all disappeared and no one could tell what had become of them. That's wild, because my little sis just got 2 new pairs of shoes. Her Converses are like 3 to 4 inches high. Ooh, like they're platform Converses? Or are they high tops or low tops? The high tops are all that's worth it. Okay. 4. When he reached the castle, Michael, our little cowboy, went straight to the gardener and offered his services. Now it happened that the garden boy, who had just been sent away, and though the stargazer did not look very sturdy, the gardener agreed to take him, as he thought that his pretty face and golden curls would please the princesses. Platform and high tops, yeah. Nice. I approve of her shoe choice. Okay. Because he's pretty, he's been hired. Oh, okay. Accordingly, he placed himself behind the door. Oh, no, wait. The first thing he was told was that when the princesses got up, he was to present each one with a bouquet, and Michael thought that if he had nothing more unpleasant to do, then he should get on very well. Okay, Nani, after this story. Accordingly, he placed himself behind the door of the princess's room, with the 12 bouquets in a basket. He gave one to each of the sisters, and they took them without even deigning to look at the lad, except Lena, the youngest, who fixed her large black eyes, as soft as velvet, on him, and exclaimed, "Oh, how pretty he is, our new flower boy." The rest all burst out laughing, and the eldest pointed out that a princess ought never to lower herself by looking at a garden boy. Hey, anonymous gifter just gave a sub to Sakuna. Everybody, we better be dropping some frogs. You know how it is, money frog. Thank you, anonymous gifter. There you go, Sakuna. You have access to frogs now, and we have a rule. Whenever someone gifts something, we drop money frogs. Raining money. Made for us by Fetster. Originally made because Death Noah was dropping a lot of gifts and I needed to show off that it made me feel like, well, it made me feel like how this frog looks. Like money was raining. Okay. Where were we? Oh yeah, the princesses are like, get over that. You're not supposed to look at someone beneath us. Ew. Now Michael knew quite well what had happened to all the princes, but notwithstanding, the beautiful eyes of the Princess Lena inspired him with a violent longing to try his fate. Unhappily, he did not dare to come forward, being afraid that he should only be jeered at, or even turned away from the castle on account of his impudence. 5. Nevertheless, the stargazer had another dream. The lady in the golden dress appeared to him once more, holding in one hand 2 young laurel trees, a cherry laurel and a rose laurel, and in the other hand a little golden rake, a little golden bucket, and a silken towel. She thus addressed him. Plant these 2 laurels in 2 large pots, rake them over with the rake, water them with the bucket, and wipe them with the towel. When they have grown as tall as a girl of 15, say to each of them, My beautiful laurel, with the golden rake I have raked you, with the golden bucket I have watered you, with the silken towel I have wiped you. Then after that, ask anything you choose, and the laurels will give it to you. Michael thanked the lady in the golden dress, and when he woke he found the 2 laurel bushes beside him, so he carefully obeyed the orders he had been given. He carefully obeyed the orders he had been given by the lady. The trees grew very fast, and when they were as tall as a girl of 15, he said to the cherry laurel, My lovely cherry laurel, with the golden rake I have raked thee, with the golden bucket I have watered thee, with the silken towel I have wiped thee. Teach me how to become invisible. Then there instantly appeared on the laurel a pretty white flower, which Michael gathered and stuck into his buttonhole. 6. That evening, when the princesses went upstairs to bed, he followed them barefoot so that he might make no noise, and hid himself under one of the 12 beds so as not to take up much room. The princesses began at once to open their wardrobes and boxes. They took out of them the most magnificent dresses, which they put on before mirrors, and when they had finished, turned themselves all around to admire their appearances. Michael could see nothing from his hiding place, thankfully. I thought he was going to be a little perv. No. But he could hear everything, and he listened to the princesses laughing and jumping with pleasure. At last the eldest said, Be quick, my sisters, our partners will be impatient. At the end of an hour, when the stargazer heard no more noise, he peeped out and saw the 12 sisters in splendid garments, with their satin shoes on their feet, and in their hands the bouquets he had brought them. Are you ready? Asked the eldest. Yes, replied the other 11 in chorus, and they took their places one by one behind her. Then the eldest princess clapped her hands 3 times, and a trap door opened. All the princesses disappeared down a secret staircase, and Michael hastily followed them. As he was following on the steps of the Princess Lena, he carelessly trod on her dress. There's somebody behind me, cried the princess. They are holding my dress. You foolish thing, said her eldest sister. You are always afraid of something. It is only a nail which caught you. Then 7. They went down, 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 till at last they came to a passage with a door at one end, which was only fastened with a latch. The eldest princess opened it, and they found themselves immediately in a lovely little wood, where the leaves were spangled with drops of silver, which shone in the brilliant light of the moon. They next crossed another wood where the leaves were sprinkled with gold, and after that another still where the leaves glittered with diamonds. At last the stargazer perceived a large lake, and on the shores of the lake 12 little boats with awnings, in which were seated 12 princes, who, grasping their oars, awaited the princesses. Each princess entered one of the boats, and Michael slipped into that which held the youngest. The boats glided along rapidly, but Lena's, from being heavier, was always behind the rest. We never went so slowly before, said the princess. What can be the reason? I don't know, answered the prince. I assure you I am rowing as hard as I can. On the other side of the lake, the garden boy saw a beautiful castle splendidly illuminated, whence came the lively music of fiddles, kettle drums, and trumpets. This is a very elaborate ordeal they're going through. I can't disagree. In a moment they touched land, and the company jumped out of the boats, and the princes, after having securely fastened their barks, gave their arms to the princesses and conducted them to the castle. 8. And it's this one, and then we'll pause. Michael followed and entered the ballroom in their train. Everywhere were mirrors, lights, flowers, and damask hangings. The stargazer was quite bewildered at the magnificence of the sight. He placed himself out of the way in a corner, admiring the grace and beauty of the princesses. Their loveliness was of every kind. Some were fair and some were dark. Some had chestnut hair or curls still darker, and some had golden locks. Never were so many beautiful princesses seen together at one time, but the one whom the cowboy thought the most beautiful and the most fascinating was the little princess with the velvet eyes. With what eagerness she danced! Leaning on her partner's shoulder, she swept by like a whirlwind. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes sparkled, and it was plain that she loved dancing better than anything else. The poor boy envied those handsome young men with whom she danced so gracefully, but he did not know how the little reason he had to be jealous of them. The young men were really the princes who, to the number of 50 at least, had tried to steal a princess's secret. The princesses had made them drink something of a philtre, which froze the heart and left nothing but the love of dancing. Ooh, I guess they do never sleep, but I guess they also stole these men and froze their hearts. But okay, we're gonna pause there. I'll do that. So we're pausing. And, okay, you say Western accent. Theoretically, this is a Western accent. I mean, really. But I'm guessing you mean Southern or cowboyish accent. I don't know. I'm overthinking it already. I'm a cowboy, baby. Baby. I'm gonna think that one a bunch. But okay, that's the little break. We'll go from 9 to 16. Nice. Okay, maybe say so. 9 to 16 is what we'll do after redeems here. But I'll give you guys a couple moments to do. Yeah, don't overthink it. That was great. Well, this is the thing. I could do a couple different versions. My brain's like, well, what? I could. Just go for it. Brushes. Okay, we'll do brushes. Okay. Just rearrange. Okay. Okay, there was our brushes. Sorry. Kind of interrupted in the middle there. What? What? Nani, what are you doing? Thank you for bits. But okay, yes, people, hello. If you see a gift, if you see other money frogs, you should be dropping them money frogs. Thank you, Nani. Nani? Perfect little emote there for that. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for bits. That is very nice. Nani and frogs mixed in. It's perfect. I love it. Thank you. All right. Did we have any other requests? Any other redeems? If not, I move along. Eh? Yeah. Okay, Fetch, go get food. We'll see you when we see you again. Alright, well, if you're not gonna do redeems, I'm gonna just take a minute where I'm muted and readjust something. It's just all sitting a little bit weird, but then we're gonna dive into the next set of story. Okay. Ooh, a stretch. Well, yeah, basically that. Thank you, Coffee Beans Cafe. I will do those. Quick stretch. Okay, I'm gonna go play Diablo 3. Nothing better than listening to story time and murdering a million demons. Hey, that's how we do. That's how we do. Hello. I'm doing good. How are you? Just adjusting the self a whole bunch. Some crinkly things might be heard. In fact, just get this sorted. Oh, that's not crinkly. That's just loud. Okay. Crunch. Okay. Casual murder. Yay! I'm great. Kissy is my most... Aw, that's great! I'm glad you like it. Scuff issues today. Scuff issues? What exactly is scuff then? People seem to really love your emotes. Yeah, which is so funny because there's like some of them are so basic. Oh, issues with model. Oh, is my model being a problem? I'm not paying attention when she's weird. She's always been weird because the angle I have to have my camera at, it's just like the only option, can mean that she is weird. And the glowiness in the bottom part of her eyes means that if you don't see the top part of her eyes, it looks like that's the iris a little bit, and it looks like she's rolling her eyes at you. That's not it. Easy. Okay. Thing. Okay, that's better. No, you just misheard. Oh yeah, no, I had to fix me. She'll be whatever she'll be, but I had to fix me up a little bit. Oh. Okay. What I was saying about emotes, they're getting very much good attentions. Vetster made some really great animations for them, and then they're just a really basic little guy. So people like the little basic animation. You don't gotta do all the work, all the complicated stuff. Simple little dude with just a little bit of a weird twist. He's more neon, and then instead of pink detailings, he's weird little purple. Chat says anything. Raven rolls her eyes. Yeah, that's how it happens sometimes. My emote or my model just looks silly. I use this one a lot because it's a bit of a cute giggle. Unlike this one. Oh yeah. It's true. And that the giggle one I did. Hee hee. There we go. That'll set that up. Thank you for the core. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome. Okay. Ugh. I am back in place. Everything is sorted. 12 Dancing Princesses, Part 2. Here we go. Settle back in. Alright. So our princesses are out dancing with the princes that had come to try and find out their secret. Oh, you're okay. I'm summarizing now. So I guess I could start from the top. There's a little cowboy dude that's always been staring at the stars, and everyone in the farmlands, they think that's stupid. But then he has a dream, and in the dream, this lady, probably a fae, says, hey, you're going to marry a princess, which he'd always thought princesses are better than farm girls. And there was a whole thing. And then, so he gets that dream again, and he says, you know what, okay, then I will go. I will go find my princess. And he goes, and he comes upon a castle that the fae had mentioned, and they have 12 princesses. There's a little bit of a mystery. 12 Dancing Princesses, Part 2. They do. I'm sure that they also toot. They will fart as well. But this is Part 2. Yes. But okay, so he's going there, and there's a little bit of a mystery. The 12 princesses all sleep in their room together, but they're locked in for their safety and control, whatever. They're locked in, and somehow every morning when they are checked in on, all their shoes, their little silk shoes, are worn through. Something has happened that ruins their shoes every night. What are they getting up to? And so then princes have come in from other places, because the king basically said, if you can find out what they're up to, you can marry whichever one of you're choosing from there. And now we've learned our little cowboy dude, who has come to work as a gardener boy at this castle, that when he had this magic tree, again, the fairy came to him in a dream, he got to be invisible when he asked the plant, hey, make me invisible. And he's followed the princesses, and they've gone in these boats with 12 princes. And when they get to the place that the boats are going, it's this giant party with like 50 princes that they're all dancing with. And the ladies, the princesses, love to dance. But who are these princes? Our man, Michael, stargazer, gardener boy, he is jealous, but he doesn't realize that all the princes are the guys that have come in, the princes that have come trying to find the mystery, trying to figure out. Bredicus is asking, it's the men that have come to find out how they ruin their shoes, and the women give them a vial, they drink it, and all that's left in them is the love of dancing. So they're literally dancing husks. That's all they do now. So that's where they're getting them. Every time a new guy has shown up to try and win their hand, find their secret, they just imprison him with the rest of them. But I'm wondering, where did they get the first princes to go dance with? But plot holes be damned. We're going to move on. So here we are. Our man has watched this, and so now he's figuring it out. Here we are. Dancing machines. Heck yeah. I love that little rat. Oh, if I got a good little dancing rat. Okay. Here we go. Section 9, or Chapter 9. They danced on till the shoes of the princesses were worn into holes. Is it ye old Tinder? I would say that it's not quite the same. They just get empty shells of men to dance for them, which feels like something else, but I don't know what would compare it to. They're just showing up to dance and then abandoning these men, so it feels a little bit like it's something else, but I don't know what I would call it else. Okay, so they danced till the shoes of the were worn into holes, as we know. When the cock crowed for the third time, the fiddles stopped, and a delicious supper was served by, oh God, I'm not saying that one. I'm not doing it at all fucking tonight. They're saying it was served by black boys with a term that is old. It's not the one that's a hard no, never, ever, 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 but it's still like, I'm not doing it tonight. And implied slaves. There you go. Okay. Y'all get me. We're moving on. So they've been served food. Yay. Consisting, the dinner, of sugared orange flowers, crystallized rose leaves, powdered violets, cracknels, wafers, and other dishes, which are, as everyone knows, the favorite food of princesses. After supper, the dancers all went back to their boats, and this time the stargazer entered that of the eldest princess. They crossed again the wood with the diamond-spangled leaves, the wood with the gold-sprinkled leaves, and the wood whose leaves glittered with drops of silver. And as a proof that of what he had seen, the boy broke a small branch from a tree in the last wood. Lena turned as she heard the noise made by the breaking of the branch. "What was that noise?" she said. "It was nothing," replied her eldest sister. "It was only the screech of the barn owl that roosts in one of the turrets of the castle. Already twice that girl has hey, something happened, and twice her sisters are like, you're crazy, shut up." No, she's on to something. No matter how much you care about preserving the literature, you should never say something you're not comfortable saying, especially when it's for good reasons. Different times be damned. Yeah. I can get behind this word sometimes in preserving literature, but I'm just, especially not today, having that energy. No. Here we go. Because that specific word is slightly less, they're never good. But anyway. While she was speaking, there you go, Michael managed to slip in front, and running up the staircase, he reached the princess's room first. He flung open the window, and sliding down the vine which climbed up the wall, found himself in the garden just as the sun was beginning to rise, and it was time for him to set to his work. There you go. 10. That day when he made up the bouquets, Michael hid the branch with the silver drops in the nosegay intended for the youngest princess. A nosegay meaning just like a bundle of flowers, because it would make your nose happy. It's just such a funny word. When Lena, this is the youngest princess who he likes, he thinks she has pretty eyes. When she discovered it, she was much surprised. However, she said nothing to her sisters, but as she met the boy by accident while she was walking under the shade of the elms, she suddenly stopped as if to speak to him. Then, altering her mind, went on her way. She had also called out, that, "Ooh, he's cute," when they first got flowers the first day that he was working, but all the other sisters said, "Don't bother with a servant boy, ew." Anyway. So she's probably stopping herself because of that. The same evening, the 12 sisters went again to the ball, and the stargazer again followed them and crossed the lake in Lena's boat. This time, it was the prince who complained that the boat seemed very heavy. Because now she probably knows. "It is the heat," replied the princess. "I too have been feeling very warm." During the ball, she looked everywhere for the gardener's boy, but she never saw him, because he's invisible. As they came back, Michael gathered a branch from the wood with the gold-spangled leaves, and now it was the eldest princess who heard the noise that made it in from breaking. "It is nothing," said Lena, "only the cry of the owl which roosts in the turrets of the castle." So she's kind of getting back at each of them that were like, shh, it's fine. That's fun. 11. As soon as she got up, she found the branch in her bouquet. When the sisters went down, she stayed a little behind and said to the cowboy, "Where does this branch come from?" "Your Royal Highness knows well enough," answered Michael. "So you have followed us?" "Yes, Princess." "How did you manage it? We never saw you." "I hid myself," replied the stargazer quietly. The princess was silent a moment and then said, "You know our secret. Keep it. Here is the reward of your discretion." And she flung the boy a purse of gold. "I do not sell my silence," answered Michael, and he went away without picking up the purse. For 3 nights Lena neither saw nor heard anything extraordinary. On the 4th she heard a rustling amongst the diamond-sparkled leaves in the wood. That day there was a branch of the trees in her bouquet. She took the stargazer aside and said to him in a harsh voice, "You know what price my father has promised to pay for our secret?" "I know, Princess," answered Michael. "Do you mean to tell him?" "That is not my intention." "Are you afraid?" "No, Princess." "What makes you so discreet, then?" But Michael was silent. This is reading very As You Wish, Princess Bride to me. He's just like, "Oh, it's fine. I'll do as you ask. Don't worry about it, but I know things." There you go. 12. Lena's sisters had seen her talking to the little garden boy and jeered at her for it. "What prevents your marrying him?" asked the eldest. "You would become a gardener too. It is a charming profession. You could live in a cottage at the end of the park and help your husband to draw up water from the well, and when we get up you could bring us our bouquets." The Princess Lena was very angry, and when the stargazer presented her bouquet she received it in a disdainful manner. Michael behaved most respectfully. He never raised his eyes to her. Thank you for the follow, Zarif Kroll. Thank you. Welcome. He never raised his eyes to her, but nearly all day she felt him at her side without ever seeing him. One day she made up her mind to tell everything to her oldest sister. "What?" said she. "This rogue knows our secret and you never told me? I must lose no time in getting rid of him." "But how?" "Why, by having him taken to the tower with the dungeons, of course." Hi, enormous little kitty. For this was the way that in the old times, beautiful princesses got rid of people who knew too much. Yeah, that's classic. But the astonishing part of it was that the youngest sister did not seem at all to relish this method of stopping the mouth of the gardener boy, who, after all, had said nothing to their father. 13. It was agreed that the question should be submitted to the other 10 sisters. All were on the side of the eldest. Then the youngest sister declared that if they laid a finger on the little garden boy, she would herself go and tell their father the secret of the holes in their shoes. At last it was decided Michael should be put to the test. They would take him to the ball at the end of the supper, give him the philtre, which was to enchant him like the rest. So he'd be another husk just for dancing. They sent for the stargazer and asked him how he had contrived to learn their secret, but still he remained silent. Then, in commanding tones, the eldest sister gave him the order they had agreed on. He only answered, "I will obey." Yep, very As You Wish energy. He had really been present, invisible, at the council of princesses, and had heard all, but he had made up his mind to drink of the philtre and sacrifice himself to the happiness of her he loved. Not wishing, however, to cut a poor figure at the ball by the side of the other dancers, he went at once to the laurels and said, My lovely rose laurel, with the golden rake I have raked thee, with the golden bucket I have watered thee, with a silken towel I have dried thee. Dress me like a prince. Ooh. I would have asked for dancing lessons more than clothes, but okay. A beautiful pink flower appeared. Michael gathered it and found himself, in a moment, clothed in velvet, which was as black as the eyes of the little princess, with a cap to match, a diamond aigrette, and a blossom of the rose laurel in his buttonhole. Thus dressed, he presented himself that evening before the Duke of Bellisle, and obtained leave to try and discover his daughter's secret. He looked so distinguished that hardly anyone would have known who he was. 14. The 12 princesses went upstairs to bed. Michael followed them and waited behind the open door till they gave the signal for departure. This time he did not cross in Lena's boat. He gave his arm to the eldest sister, danced with each in turn, and was so graceful that everyone was delighted with him. At last the time came for him to dance with the little princess. She found him the best partner in the world, but he did not dare to speak a single word to her. When he was taking her back to her place, she said to him in a mocking voice, "Here you are at the summit of your wishes. You are being treated like a prince." Apparently he didn't need those dancing. Apparently he did not. Here at summit, "Don't be afraid," replied the stargazer gently. "You shall never be a gardener's wife." The little princess stared at him with a frightened face, and he left her without waiting for an answer. When the satin slippers were worn through, the fiddle stopped, and the boys set the table. Michael was placed next to the eldest sister, and opposite to the youngest. They gave him the most exquisite dishes to eat, and the most delicate wines to drink, and in order to turn his head more completely, the compliments and flattery were heaped on him from every side. But he took care not to be intoxicated either by the wine or the compliments. At last the eldest sister made a sign, and one of the black pages brought in a large golden cup. "The enchanted castle has no more secrets for you," she said to the stargazer. "Let us drink to your triumph." He cast a lingering glance at the little princess, and without hesitation lifted the cup. "Don't drink," suddenly cried out the little princess. "I would rather marry a gardener," and she burst into tears. "Oh!" Michael flung the contents of the cup behind him, sprang over the table, and fell at Lena's feet. The rest of the princes fell likewise at the knees of the princesses, each of whom chose a husband and raised him to her side. The charm was broken. Ah, but they had like 50 princes, so there's still a bunch of dudes that just didn't win any heart that day, so oops. But okay. The 12 couples embarked in the boats, which crossed back many times in order to carry over the other princes. There you go. They all went through the 3 woods, and when they had passed the door of the underground passage, a great noise was heard, as if the enchanted castle was crumbling to the earth. They went straight to the room of the Duke of Bellisle, who had just awoke. It's 'cause they got 0 riz. They do. "Hey, you got 78. That's not too bad. We had 107 and 102 earlier, though." They went straight to the Duke of Bellisle, who had just awoke. Michael held in his hand the golden cup, and he revealed the secret of the holes in the shoes. "Choose, then," said the Duke, "whichever you prefer." "My choice is already made," replied the garden boy, and he offered his hand to the youngest princess, who blushed and lowered her eyes. I would have said they already chose for us, but you know. And here we are. Did I announce chapter 15? I don't think I did. 16. 16. The Princess Lena did not become a gardener's wife. On the contrary, it was the stargazer who became a prince. But before the marriage ceremony, the princess insisted that her lover should tell her how he came to discover the secret. So he showed her to the two laurels which had helped him, and she, like a prudent girl, thinking they gave him too much advantage over his wife, cut them off at the root and threw them in the fire. And this is why the country girls go about singing, Nous n'irons plus au bois, les laurels sont coupés, and dancing in summer by the light of the moon. I guess I'm going to have to translate that bit of French. I know I didn't pronounce well, but it's gone for 30 minutes. Thanks, Anonymous, for the gifted. Yes, now you're back. You got gifted. You probably didn't see, but there's a thing we do whenever someone gifts. We make it raining money frogs. It's the little emote, raining money frog. Every time there's a gift, so that we all share it. It says, we won't go into the woods again, I guess is what it's called. No, come on. Hey. And there's the story again written out here. But where is the translation? This should probably be it. We will no longer go to the woods. The laurels are cut. The beauty there will go and collect them. It's a whole song. Enter, so that's the start, and then enter the dance, see how we dance, jump, dance, kiss whoever you want, and the laurels of the wood will let us fade. No, each in turn will go and pick them up. Enter the dance, see how we dance, jump, dance, kiss whoever you want. If the cicada sleeps there, don't hurt it, the nightingale's song will come to wake it up. Enter the dance, da-da-da-da. And also the warbler with its sweet throat, and Jean, the shepherdess with her white basket. Enter the dance. Cicada, my cicada, come on, we must sing, for the laurels of the wood are already pushed back. We will no longer go into the woods. The laurels are cut, the beauty there, we will go and collect them. Very cute. Okay, well, that's the story of that little song that I didn't know existed. But there was our start into the Red Fairy book. That's another long one. How do I feel about that? These are all long stories at the start. Is there only the short stories at the end of these books? It seems so. Okay. I'm gonna run an ad quickly because it's going to do that. So here we go, the little ad. Okay, well, alright. Would this be too long to try to read? I think it might be. Trying to think, trying to decide. Oh, I didn't bring down this. That was the end of the 12 Dancing Princesses. If you didn't pick up on that, that was the end of that story. I think we have enough time for another long one, but I would want to break in the middle of it. But this one doesn't have chapters, so it's going to be a little bit harder to pick the middle. Okay, maybe that's where we break. Maybe a little bit lower than that. Yeah, okay, that's a good divide. Alright, so we'll do the next story. There's been no redeems, so I'm fine to keep moving into the next story. I'm just gonna adjust everything. The next one is called The Princess Mayblossom. Sounds fun, so I think that'll be fun. Princess Mayblossom. There we go. Alright. Do we really have no redeems? That's perfectly good. It's not terribly common. Alright. I will run straight into the next story, and I think then we'll have plenty of time, but we can do redeems. Oh, there we are. Glass jar, tappy tappy. Alright, we'll do just glass bar. Glass jar. Glass jar. Oh, it's okay. I do appreciate when you give me a little bit more warning with them, but it's all fine. Do-do-do. Boop, boop. Boop. There we go. So here we go with these. There was glass jar. Okay. Oop. Alright. Okay, Sakuna, good night. If you're going out, that's fine. Yawnings. Okay. Now we'll go back to the title. Ooh. Princess Mayblossom. Drop your redeems as soon as you want them, so that I don't think that I should move on, because that's the only thing about them coming in later, is that then I'm like, okay, well then I guess I'll just start the next story. And if you were like, no, I wanted one, you just go just submit it while I'm reading the story, and I'll get to it first thing when we're done that story. So don't worry about it if you interrupt with those. You're all good. And if you do have a last minute one, it's okay. I just also might end up missing it, and we'll have to save it for the next break. But happy to do them whenever I see them. Okay. The Princess Mayblossom. Once upon a time there lived a king and queen whose children had all died. First one and then another, until at last only one little daughter remained, and the queen was at her wits' end to know where to find a really good nurse who would take care of her and bring her up. A herald was sent who blew a trumpet at every street corner and commanded all the best nurses to appear before the queen, that she might choose one for the little princess. So on the appointed day, the whole palace was crowded with nurses who came from the 4 corners of the world to offer themselves, until the queen declared that if she was ever to see the half of them, they must be brought out to her one by one, as she sat in a shady wood near the palace. This was accordingly done, and the nurses, after they had made their curtsy to the king and queen, ranged themselves in a line before her that she might choose. Oh, bad roll, Nunny. Let's do it. Most of them, the nurses, were fair and fat, and charming. But there was one who was dark-skinned and ugly. Okay, well, this is not going to be fun. And spoke a strange language which nobody could understand. The queen wondered how she dared offer herself, and she was told to go away, as she certainly would not do. There you go. She says no. Oh, just as bad. Yikes. Consistency. Upon which she muttered something and passed on, but hid herself in a hollow tree from which she could see all that happened. I'm guessing this is the nurse. Muttered something and then hid. The queen, without giving her another thought, chose a pretty rosy-faced nurse, but no sooner was her choice made than a snake, which was hidden in the grass, bit that very nurse on her foot, so that she fell down as if dead. So theoretically still alive. Okay. The queen was very much vexed by this accident, but she soon selected another, who was just stepping forward when an eagle flew by and dropped a large tortoise upon her head, which was cracked in pieces like an eggshell. Oh, jeez. That one sounds a lot more definitively done. Okay. At this, the queen was much horrified, I bet. Nevertheless, she chose a third time, but with no better fortune, for the nurse, moving quickly, ran into the branch of a tree and blinded herself with a thorn. Then the queen, in dismay, cried that there must be some malignant influence at work, and that she would choose no more that day. And she had just risen to return to the palace when she heard peals of malicious laughter behind her, and turning round, saw the ugly stranger whom she had dismissed, who was making very merry over the disasters and mocking everyone, but especially the queen. Extremely hazardous occupation, yes. Caged, yes, definitely showing off. This annoyed Her Majesty very much, and she was about to order that she should be arrested, when the witch, for she was a witch, with 2 blows from a wand, summoned a chariot of fire drawn by winged demons, and was whirled off through the air, uttering threats and cries. When the king saw this, he cried, "Alas, now we are ruined indeed, for that was no other than the fairy Carabosse, who has had a grudge against me ever since I was a boy, and put sulphur into her porridge one day for fun." Then the queen began to cry. If I had only known who it was, she said, I would have done my best to make friends with her. Now I suppose all is lost. Yeah. Kids, remember kids, always wear your safety glasses when running through thorns. To be fair, I don't think any of those nurse ladies had any reason to suspect the dangers that came flying at them. But yeah. The king was sorry to have frightened her so much, and proposed that they should go and hold a council as to what was best to be done to avert the misfortunes which Caraboss certainly meant to bring upon the little princess. So, hello, puzzles. So all the counselors were summoned to the palace, and when they had shut every door and window, they stuffed up every keyhole that they might not be overheard. They talked the affair over and decided that every fairy for 1,000 leagues round should be invited to the christening of the princess, and that the time of the ceremony should be kept a profound secret in case the fairy Caboss should take it into her head to attend it. The queen and her ladies set to work to prepare the presents for the fairies who were invited. For each one a blue velvet cloak, a petticoat of apricot satin, a pair of high-heeled shoes, some sharp needles, and a pair of golden scissors. Of all the fairies the queen knew, only 5 were able to come on the day appointed, but they began immediately to bestow gifts upon the princess. One promised that she should be perfectly beautiful, the second that she should understand anything, no matter what, the first time it was explained to her, the third that she should sing like a nightingale, the fourth that she should succeed in everything she undertook, and the 5th was opening her mouth to speak when a tremendous rumbling was heard in the chimney, and Caraboss, all covered with soot, came rolling down, crying, I say that she shall be the unluckiest of the unlucky until she is 20 years old. Then the queen and all the fairies began to beg and beseech her to think better of it, and not be so unkind to the poor little princess who had never done her any harm. But the ugly old fairy only grunted and made no answer. So the last fairy, who had not yet given her gift... sorry. Oh my gosh, that yawn really attacked me in the middle of that. The fairy who had not yet given her gift tried to mend matters by promising the princess a long and happy life after the fatal time was over. At this, Caraboss laughed maliciously and climbed away up the chimney, leaving them all in great consternation, and especially the queen. However, she entertained the fairies splendidly and gave them beautiful ribbons, of which they are very fond, in addition to their other presents. I don't know what you're talking about, Millennial Echo. I have no idea what you're talking about. When they were... It's the first time you ever seen that? I'm sorry, technical issues. I've told you that my model will do what it do. Okay. Let me get their other presents. When they were going away, the oldest fairy said that they were of opinion that it would be best to shut the princess up in some place, with her waiting women, so that she might not see anyone else until she was 20 years old. So the king had a tower built on purpose. It had no windows, so it was lighted with wax candles, and the only way into it was by an underground passage, which had iron doors only 20 feet apart, and guards were posted everywhere. They were tired of waiting, so they walked away. Oh, my legs, you mean? No, it's totally fine. I was just surprised. Yeah. It'll happen every once in a while. I kind of referred to it at some point today. The place that I have to have camera, it's almost like I end up with a magic mirror that hates me sometimes with this model. You don't quite get me, do you? But you try. But okay, so there's guards everywhere. No, don't make me laugh. Dum-Dum will do that. Guards everywhere. The princess had been named Mayblossom because she was as fresh and blooming as spring herself, and she grew up tall and beautiful, and everything she did and said was charming. Every time the king and queen came to see her, they were more delighted with her than before. But though she was weary of the tower, and often begged them to take her away from it, they always refused. The princess's nurse, who had never left her, sometimes told her about the world outside the tower, and though the princess had never seen anything for herself, yet she always understood exactly, thanks to the second fairy's gift, often said to the king and queen, "We were cleverer than Caraboss after all. Our Mayblossom will be happy in spite of her predictions." Okay. Oh no. Sorry. The king said to the queen that they were cleverer than Caraboss after all. There's a lot of you in there that are funny. Hi, Brady. I'm gonna go, guys. Have fun. Okay, Nani. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Rest well, yes. And then the queen laughed until she was tired at the idea of having outwitted the old fairy. So she doesn't think that they've outwitted the fairy. The king thinks they have. Bratty. Oh no, Cage Wind bonked Bratty. I thought Bratty bonked himself. There you go. Should I be concerned? Okay. Alright. You tell me if I should be worried, Cage. Okay. Okay. I just feel very left out is all now. Okay. But alright, so the king is like, we've outwit the fairy. The queen is laughing at that. No, we didn't. They had caused the princess's portrait to be painted and sent to all the neighboring courts, for in 4 days she would have completed her 20th year, and it was time to decide whom she should marry. Aha! Yay! Oh, okay. Alrighty. Wait till we know what this is about. My hips. You little stewers over there. You just stewing about something. Okay. So she's about to turn 20 and should be free of the unluckiness, but here we go. It was time for her to decide who to marry. She hasn't even left her tower, and you're going to make her to decide who to marry already? That's ridiculous. That's the real unlucky, but okay. All the town was rejoicing at the thought of the princess's approaching freedom, and when the news came that King Merlin was sending his ambassador to ask her in marriage for his son, they were still more delighted. The nurse, who kept the princess informed of everything that went forward in the town, did not fail to repeat the news that so nearly concerned her, and gave such a description of the splendor in which the ambassador Fanfaronade, the ambassador Fanfaronade, that's the name, I guess. Thank you for the follow, Marlon Ramirez. Thank you. Battle Chain. Oh, okay. Go enjoy work. Bye-bye. Fanfaronade entered the town, that the princess was wild to see the procession herself. Okay, I just know she's gonna break out, and that's when all the craziness is gonna happen. Okay. What an unhappy creature I am, she cried. To be shut up in this dismal tower, as if I had committed some crime. I have never seen the sun or the stars, or a horse or a monkey or a lion except in pictures, and though the king and queen tell me I am to be set free when I am 20, I believe they only say it to keep me amused, when they never mean to let me out at all. Oh no, not true. I thought you were blessed to be able to understand things. No, that's not what it is. Ugh. Okay, and then she began to cry, and her nurse, and the nurse's daughter, and the cradle rocker, and the nursery maid, who all loved her dearly, cried too for company, so that nothing could be heard but sobs and sighs. It was a scene of woe. When the princess saw that they all pitied her, she made up her mind to have her own way. Oh no. So she declared that she would starve herself to death if they did not find some means of letting her see Fanfaronad's grand entry into the town. If you really love me, she said, you will manage it somehow or other, and the king and queen need never know anything about it. Oh, they're gonna know if you do that. Then the nurse and all the others cried harder than ever, and said everything they could think of to turn the princess from her idea. But the more they said, the more determined she was, and at last they consented to make a tiny hole in the tower on the side that looked towards the city gates. After scratching and scraping all day and night, they... Wait a second. Where's my... Oh no, I lost my halfway point thing. Okay. Okay. Oh goodness, I'm barely through anything. After scratching and scraping all day and night, they presently made a hole through which they could, with great difficulty, push a very slender needle, and out of this the princess looked at the daylight for the first time. She was so dazzled and delighted by what she saw, that there she stayed, never taking her eyes away from the peephole for a single minute, until presently the ambassador's procession appeared in sight. At the head of it rode Fanfaronade himself upon a white horse, which pranced and carouseled to the sound of the trumpets. Nothing could have been more splendid than the ambassador's attire. His coat was nearly hidden under an embroidery of pearls and diamonds, his boots were solid gold, and from his helmet floated scarlet plumes. At the sight of him the princess lost her wits entirely, and determined that Fanfaronade and nobody else would she marry. Honestly, oh, okay, then go to bed, Cage. We'll see you another time. Oh, I'm sorry that's been affecting you, and you said that you were still sick, so definitely go sleep. Go sleep. Rest well. Take care of yourself. We'll see you another time. Yes, as Death No and Vetster say, have a good night. Take care. It is quite impossible, she said, that his master should be half as handsome and delightful. I am not ambitious, and having spent all my life in this tedious tower, anything, even a house in the country, will seem a delightful change. I am sure that bread and water shared with Fanfaronade will please me far better than roast chicken and sweetmeats with anybody else. This is literally the first man you've ever seen, besides your father. So, okay. And so she went on, talking, until her waiting women wondered where she got it all from. But when they tried to stop her, and represented that her high rank made it perfectly impossible that she should do any such thing, she would not listen, and ordered them to be silent. As soon as the ambassador arrived at the palace, the queen started to fetch her daughter. All the streets were spread with carpets, and the windows were full of ladies who were waiting to see the princess, and carried baskets of flowers and sweetmeats to shower upon her as she passed. They had hardly begun to get the princess ready when a dwarf arrived, mounted upon an elephant. He came from the 5 fairies, and brought for the princess a crown, a scepter, and a robe of golden brocade, with a petticoat marvelously embroidered with butterflies' wings. They also sent a casket of jewels, so splendid that no one had ever seen anything like it before, and the queen was perfectly dazzled when she opened it. But the princess scarcely gave a glance to any of these treasures, for she thought of nothing but Fanfaronade. The dwarf was rewarded with a gold piece and decorated with so many ribbons that it was hardly possible to see him at all. The princess sent to each of the fairies a new spinning wheel with a distaff of cedar wood, and the queen said she must look through her treasures and find something very charming to send them also. When the princess was arrayed in all the gorgeous things the dwarf had brought, she was more beautiful than ever, and as she walked along the streets, the people cried, "How pretty she is! How pretty she is!" The procession consisted of the queen, the princess, 5 dozen other princesses, her cousins, and 10 dozen who came from the neighboring kingdoms, and as they proceeded at a stately pace, the sky began to grow dark. Then suddenly the thunder growled, and rain and hail fell in torrents. The queen put her royal mantle over her head, and all the princesses did the same with their trains. Mayblossom was just about to follow their example when a terrific croaking, as of an immense army of crows, rooks, ravens, screech owls, and all birds of ill omen was heard. And at the same instant a huge owl skimmed up to the princess and threw over her scarf woven of spiders' webs and embroidered with bats' wings. And then peals of mocking laughter rang through the air, and they guessed that this was another of the fairy Caraboss's unpleasant jokes. Thanks for the follow, Spiffy Lemur. Spiffy Lemur, that's really cute. I like that a lot. Okay, the queen was terrified at such an evil omen, and tried to pull the black scarf from the princess's shoulders, but it really seemed as if it must be nailed on, it clung so closely. "Ah," cried the queen, "can nothing appease this enemy of ours? What good was it that I sent her more than 50 pounds of sweetmeats, and as much again of the best sugar, not to mention 2 Westphalia hams? She is as angry as ever." All right, go to bed, Millennial Echo. We'll see you another time. Sleep, sweet. I keep saying sweet. Sleep well. There you go. While she lamented in this way, and everybody was as wet as if they had been dragged through a river, the princess still thought of nothing but the ambassador, and just at this moment he appeared before her with the king, and there was a great blowing of trumpets, and all the people shouted louder than ever. Fanfaronade was not generally at a loss for something to say, but when he saw the princess, she was so much more beautiful and majestic than he had expected, that he could only stammer out a few words, and entirely forgot the harangue which he had been learning for months, and knew well enough to have repeated it in his sleep. So did she get it off her face or not? I guess she got the thing off her face. I don't know. But he can't remember his thing again. To gain time to remember at least part of it, he made several low bows to the princess, who on her side dropped 6 curtsies without stopping to think, and then said, to relieve his evident embarrassment, "Sir Ambassador, I am sure that everything you intend to say is charming, since it is you who mean to say it, but let us make haste into the palace, as it is pouring cats and dogs, and the wicked fairy Caraboss will be amused to see us all stand dripping here. When we are once under the shelter, we can laugh at her." Upon this the ambassador found his tongue and replied gallantly that the fairy had evidently foreseen the flames that would be kindled by the bright eyes of the princess, and had sent this deluge to extinguish them. Then he offered his hand to conduct the princess, and she said softly, "As you could not possibly guess how much I like you, Sir Fanfaronade, I am obliged to tell you plainly that, since I saw you enter the town on your beautiful prancing horse, I have been sorry that you came to speak for another instead of for yourself. So if you think about it as I do, I will marry you instead of your master. Of course I know you are not a prince, but I shall be just as fond of you as if you were, and we can go and live in some cozy little corner of the world and be as happy as the days are long." Thank you, Wesley, for the follow. Welcome. Thank you for follow. The ambassador thought he must be dreaming, and could hardly believe what the lovely princess said. He dared not answer, but only squeezed the princess's hand until he really hurt her little finger, but she did not cry out. When they reached the palace, the king kissed his daughter on both cheeks and said, "My little lambkin, are you willing to marry the great King Merlin's son, for this ambassador has come on his behalf to fetch you?" "If you please, sire," said the princess, dropping a curtsy. "I consent also," said the queen, "so let the banquet be prepared." This was done with all speed, and everybody feasted except Mayblossom and Fanfaronade, who looked at one another and forgot everything else. But then why did she just consent? I'm very confused, but okay. After the banquet came a ball, and after that again a ballet, and at last they were all so tired that everyone fell asleep just where he sat. Only the lovers were as wide awake as mice, and the princess, seeing that there was nothing to fear, said to Fanfaronade, "Let us be quick and run away, for we shall never have a better chance than this." Then she took the king's dagger, which was in a diamond sheath, and the queen's neck handkerchief, and gave her hand to Fanfaronade, who carried a lantern, and they ran out together into the muddy street and down to the seashore. Here they got into a little boat in which the poor old boatman was sleeping, and when he woke up and saw the lovely princess, with all her diamonds and her spider's web scarf, he did not know what to think, and obeyed her instantly when she commanded him to set out. They could see neither moon nor stars, but in the queen's neck handkerchief there was a carbuncle which glowed like 50 torches. Fanfaronade asked the princess where she would like to go, but she only answered that she did not care where she went as long as he was with her. "But, princess," said he, "I dare not take you back to King Merlin's court. He would think hanging too good for me." "Oh, in that case," she answered, "we had better go to Squirrel Island. It is lonely enough and not too far off for anyone to follow us there." So she ordered the old boatman to steer for Squirrel Island. Meanwhile the day was breaking, and the king and queen and all the courtiers began to wake up and rub their eyes and think it was time to finish the preparations for the wedding. And the queen asked for her neck handkerchief that she might look smart. Then there was a scurrying hither and thither, and a hunting everywhere. They looked into every place, from the wardrobes to the stoves, and the queen herself ran about from garret to the cellar, but the handkerchief was nowhere to be found. By this time the king had missed his dagger, and the search began all over again. They opened boxes and chests of which the keys had been lost for 100 years, and found new numbers of curious things, but not the dagger. And the king tore his beard, and the queen tore her hair, for the handkerchief and the dagger were the most valuable things in the kingdom. When the king saw that the search was hopeless, he said, "Never mind. Let us make haste and get the wedding over before anything else is lost." And then he asked where the princess was. Upon this her nurse came forward and said, "Sire, I have been seeking her these 2 hours, but she is nowhere to be found. This is more than the queen could bear." She gave a shriek of alarm and fainted away, and they had to pour 2 barrels of eau de cologne over her before she recovered. When she came to herself, everybody was looking for the princess in the greatest terror and confusion. But as she did not appear, the king said to his page, "Go and find the ambassador Fanfaronade, who is doubtless asleep in some corner, and tell him the sad news." "Oh, buddy." So the page hunted hither and thither, but Fanfaronade was no more to be found than the princess, the dagger, or the neck handkerchief. And this is where I was going to pause. And we have about a half of the story left. So I'm going to just give myself a couple of moments and adjust. And you guys can drop redeems if you wanted that, but I think I would prefer to run through this because I don't think I'll end before I don't think I'll finish the story before I'd usually be trying to head off. But either way, I need just a moment for myself, so I'll mute and say the BRB screen. Okay, I see there's no redeems and just Fetster dropped a nod, so. And I know that a bunch of our chattier people have already left for the night, so I'm just gonna keep reading. Yeah, alright. I'm determined to finish this story, so we will. Then the king summoned his counselors and his guards. And I'm still here. Yes, you are. You are. I said most of, not all. At least I think I said most of. Ooh. Anyway, the king summoned his counselors and his guards, and accompanied by the queen, went into his great hall. As he had not had time to prepare his speech beforehand, the king ordered that silence should be kept for 3 hours, and at the end of that time he spoke as follows. Hey! Thank you, anonymous gifter, for gifting that out. We should drop some money frogs for them. Thank you for doing that. Puzzes Helmoth. If you're here watching, we always drop money frogs for people whenever there's someone gifting. So if they gift a sub, if they do something bits or throne or something, we do the money frogs for them. But now you know, and now you should have access to those. Okay. At the end of 3 hours, right, he says, listen, great, and it just has an exclamation point in the place of a word. Listen, great, and my dear daughter Mayblossom is lost. Whether she has been stolen away or simply has disappeared, I cannot tell. The queen's neck handkerchief and my sword, which were worth their weight in gold, are also missing. And what is worst of all, the ambassador Fanfaronade is nowhere to be found. I greatly fear that the king his master, when he receives no tidings from him, will come seek him among us, and will accuse us of having made mincemeat of him. Perhaps I could bear even that if I had any money, but I assure you that the expenses of the wedding have completely ruined me. Oh, no! Advise me then, my dear subjects, what I had better do to recover my daughter, Fanfaronade, and the other things. This was the most eloquent speech the king had been known to make, and when everybody had done admiring it, the prime minister made answer, Sir, we are all very sorry to see you so sorry. We would give anything we value in the world to take away the cause of your sorrow. But this seems to be another of the tricks of the fairy Carabosse. The princess's 20 unlucky years were not quite over, and really, if truth must be told, I noticed that Fanfaronade and the princess appeared to admire one another greatly. Perhaps this may give some clue to the mystery of their disappearance. Here the queen interrupted him, saying, Take care what you say, sir. Believe me, the Princess Mayblossom was far too well brought up to think of falling in love with an ambassador. Did no one listen to her? She said it very plain. At this the nurse came forward, and falling on her knees, confessed how they had made the little needle hole in the tower, and how the princess had declared when she saw the ambassador that she would marry him and nobody else. And the queen was very angry, and gave the nurse and the cradle rocker and the nursery maid such a scolding that they all shook in their shoes. But the admirable cocked hat interrupted her, crying. It says the Admiral Cocked Hat, so I guess that's his name. Cocked Hat. Can't. He interrupted her, crying, Let us be off after this good-for-nothing Fanfaronade, for without a doubt he has run away with our princess. Then there was a great clapping of hands, and everybody shouted, By all means, let us be after him. So while some embarked upon the sea, the others ran from kingdom to kingdom, beating drums and blowing trumpets, and wherever a crowd collected they cried, Whoever wants a beautiful doll, sweetmeats of all kinds, a little pair of scissors, a golden robe, and a satin cap, has only to say where Fanfaronade has hidden the Princess Mayblossom. But the answer everywhere was, You must go farther, we have not seen them. General Roosterface, of course. Essentially, yeah, no, nearly. It's just a hat that's tipped to the side, I guess, but what a name to be named how you wear your hat. However, those who went by sea were more fortunate, for after sailing about for some time they noticed a light before them which burned at night like a great fire. At first they dared not go near it, not knowing what it might be. But by and by it remained stationary over Squirrel Island, for as you have guessed already, the light was the glowing carbuncle. The princess and Fanfaronade, on landing upon the island, had given the boatman 100 gold pieces and made him promise solemnly to tell no one where he had taken them. But the first thing that happened was that as he rowed away he got into the midst of the fleet, and before he could escape the admiral had seen him and sent a boat after him. When he was searched they found the gold pieces in his pocket, and as they were quite new coins, struck in honor of the princess's wedding, the admiral felt certain that the boatman must have been paid by the princess to aid in her flight. But he would not answer any questions, and pretended to be deaf and dumb. Then the admiral said, "Oh, deaf and dumb is he? Lash him to the mast and give him a taste of the cat o' nine tails. I don't know anything better than that for curing the deaf and dumb." That's awful, but okay. And when the old boatman saw that he was in earnest, he told all he knew about the cavalier and the lady whom he had landed upon Squirrel Island. And the admiral knew it must be the princess and Fanfaronade, so he gave the order for the fleet to surround the island. The Nine-Tails, yeah. Meanwhile, the Princess Mayblossom, who was by this time terribly sleepy, had found a grassy bank in the shade, and throwing herself down, had already fallen into a profound slumber, when Fanfaronade, who happened to be hungry and not sleepy, came and woke her up, saying very crossly, "Pray, madam, how long do you mean to stay here? I see nothing to eat, and though you may be very charming, the sight of you does not prevent me from famishing." "What, Fanfaronade," said the princess, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. "Is it possible that when I am here with you you can want anything else? You ought to be thinking all the time how happy you are." "Happy," cried he. "Say, rather unhappy. I wish that with all my heart that you were back in your dark tower again." "Darling, don't be cross," said the princess. "I will go and see if I can find some wild fruit for you." "I wish you might find a wolf to eat you up," growled Fanfaronade. Wow, okay. Big turn on his attitude. The princess, in great dismay, ran hither and thither all about the wood, tearing her dress and hurting her pretty white hands with the thorns and brambles, but she could find nothing good to eat, and at last she had to go back sorrowfully to Fanfaronade. When he saw that she came empty-handed, he got up and left her, grumbling to himself. The next day they searched again, but with no better success. "Alas," said the princess, "if only I could find something for you to eat." Hither and thither, hither and thither. It just means here and there. But it's just old-timey. No, I should not mind that What? I lost where I was. "If only I could find something for you to eat, I should not mind being hungry myself." "No, I should not mind that either," answered Fanfaronade. "Is it possible," said she, "that you would not care if I died of hunger? Oh, Fanfaronade, you said you loved me." "That was when we were in quite another place, and I was not hungry," said he. "It makes a great difference in one's ideas to be dying of hunger and thirst on a desert island." And the princess was dreadfully vexed, and she sat down under a white rose bush and began to cry bitterly. I think she's learning an important lesson. Do not love someone blindly. Do not fall in love with someone you don't know. Happy roses, she thought to herself. They have only to bloom. They have only to blossom in the sunshine and be admired, and there is nobody to be unkind to them. And the tears ran down her cheeks and splashed on the rose tree roots. Bush roots, you mean? Presently she was surprised to see the whole bush rustling and shaking, and a soft little voice from the prettiest rosebud said, "Poor princess, look in the trunk of that tree and you will find a honeycomb. Don't be foolish enough to share it with Fanfaronade." Mayblossom ran to the tree, and sure enough there was the honey. Without losing a moment she ran with it to Fanfaronade, crying gaily, "See, here is a honeycomb that I have found. I might have eaten it up all by myself, but I had rather share it with you." But without looking at her or thanking her, he snatched the honeycomb out of her hands and ate it all up, every bit, without offering her a morsel. Indeed, when she humbly asked for some, he said mockingly that it was too sweet for her and would spoil her teeth. Ooh. But you still need to take a risk sometime, right? No. You don't need to commit without at all knowing someone. That's the point of the story. I mean, you can do whatever you wish, but that's another one. They are opposing lessons. They are not, no. In this context, you should not be just blindly falling in love with someone you literally do not know and committing fully. It's a good lesson to know that they could be anything. You can make your choices with that in knowledge, but don't assume that they are the perfect version that you think. So he's saying it's too sweet, you have to go. Unlucky and love. Ah, yes, she was. There she is. Mayblossom, more downcast than ever, went sadly away and sat down under an oak tree, and her tears and sighs were so piteous that the oak fanned her with his rustling leaves and said, "Take courage, pretty princess, all is not lost yet. Take this pitcher of milk and drink it up, and whatever you do, don't leave a drop for Fanfaronade." The princess, quite astonished, looked round and saw a big pitcher full of milk, but before she could raise it to her lips, the thought of how thirsty Fanfaronade must be after eating at least 15 pounds of honey. 15 pounds of honey? Jesus Christ. Anyway, made her run back to him and say, "Here is a pitcher of milk, drink some, for you must be thirsty, I am sure, but pray save a little for me, as I am dying of hunger and thirst." Oh my gosh. But he seized the pitcher and drank all it contained at a single draught, and then broke it to atoms on the nearest stone, so she couldn't even pull up a cup of other water with it or something. And he said, saying with a malicious smile, "As you have not eaten anything, you cannot be thirsty." "Ah," cried the princess, "I am well punished for disappointing the king and queen and running away with this ambassador about whom I knew nothing." Indeed. Yeah, noticing a pattern here. I noticed when he first started saying things, and then she went with it. And so saying, she wandered away into the thickest part of the wood and sat down under a thorn tree, where a nightingale was singing. Presently she heard him say, "Search under the bush, princess. You will find some sugar, almonds, and some tarts there, but don't be silly enough to offer Fanfaronade any." And this time the princess, who was fainting with hunger, took the nightingale's advice, and ate what she found all by herself. But Fanfaronade, seeing that she had found something good, was not going to share it with him, ran after her in such a fury that she hastily drew out the queen's carbuncle, which had the property of rendering people invisible if they were in danger. And when she was safely hidden from him, she reproached him gently for his unkindness. So only once she felt safe, she could tell him that he was being unkind. Meanwhile, Admiral Cocked Hat had dispatched Jack the Chatterer of the Straw Boots, courier in ordinary to the Prime Minister, to the king, that the princess and the ambassador had landed on Squirrel Island, but that, not knowing the country, he had not pursued them, for fear of being captured by concealed enemies. Their majesties were overjoyed at the news, and the king sent for a great book, each leaf of which was 8 ells long. It was the work of a very clever fairy, and contained a description of the whole earth. He very soon found that Squirrel Island was uninhabited. "Go," said he to Jack the Chatterer. "Tell the admiral from me to land at once. I am surprised at his not having done so sooner." As soon as this message reached the fleet, every preparation was made for war, and the noise was so great that it reached the ears of the princess, who at once flew to protect her lover. Don't bother. As he was not very brave, he accepted her aid gladly. Only time that he's glad of her. seems. You stand behind me, said she, and I will hold the carbuncle which will make us invisible, and with the king's dagger I can protect you from the enemy. So when the soldiers landed they could see nothing, but the princess touched them one after another with the dagger. She just touched them? Okay, and they fell insensible upon the sand. So that, at last, the admiral, seeing that there was some enchantment, hastily gave orders for a retreat to be sounded, and got his men back into their boats in great confusion. Fanfaronade, being once more left with the princess, began to think that if he could get rid of her and possess himself the carbuncle and the dagger, he would be able to make his escape. Oh, God. So, as they walked back over the cliffs, he gave the princess a great push, hoping she would fall into the sea, but she stepped aside so quickly that he only succeeded in overbalancing himself, and over he went, and sank to the bottom of the sea like a lump of lead, and was never heard of any more. Woohoo! People cheer. This is where I want some party animals in the chat. Okay. While the princess was still looking after him in horror, her attention was attracted by a rushing noise over her head, and looking up she saw 2 chariots approaching rapidly from opposite directions. One was bright and glittering and drawn by swans and peacocks, while the fairy who sat in it was beautiful as a sunbeam. Oh, hi, Chris0091. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining. All the other was drawn by bats and ravens and contained a frightful little dwarf who was dressed in a snakeskin and wore a great toad upon her head for a hood. The chariots met with a frightful crash in mid-air, and the princess looked on in breathless anxiety while a furious battle took place between the lovely fairy, with her golden lance, and the hideous little dwarf and her rusty pike. But very soon it was evident that the beauty had the best of it, and the dwarf turned her bats' heads and flickered away in great confusion, while the fairy came down to where the princess stood and said, smiling, "You see, princess, I have completely routed that malicious old Caraboss. Will you believe it? She actually wanted to claim authority over you forever, because you came out of the tower 4 days before the 20 years were ended. However, I think I have settled her pretensions, and I hope you will be very happy and enjoy the freedom I've won for you." Fun little first chat, thank you. The princess thanked her heartily, and then the fairy dispatched one of her peacocks to her palace to bring a gorgeous robe for Mayblossom, who certainly needed it, for her own was torn to shreds by the thorns and briars. Another peacock was sent to the admiral to tell him that he could now land in perfect safety, which he at once did, bringing all his men with him, even to Jack the Chatterer, who, happening to pass the spit upon the admiral's dinner was roasting, snatched it up and brought it with him. I'm glad Jack got his little extra fun, just a fun little random extra bit of info, random extra character. Admiral Cocked Hat was immensely surprised when he came upon the golden chariot, and still more so to see the 2 lovely ladies walking under the trees a little farther away. When he reached them, of course, he recognized the princess, and he went down on his knees and kissed her hand quite joyfully. Then she presented him to the fairy and told him how Caraboss had been finally routed, and then he thanked and congratulated the fairy, who was most gracious to him. While they were talking, she cried very suddenly, "I declare I smell a savory dinner." "Why, yes, madam, here it is," said Jack the Chatterer, holding up the spit, where all the pheasants and partridges were fizzling. "Will your highness please to taste any of them?" "By all means," said the fairy, "especially as the princess will certainly be glad of a good meal." Thanks for the follow, A. Morgan33. Thanks for that. So the admiral sent back to his ship for everything that was needful, and they feasted merrily under the trees. By the time they had finished, the peacock had come back with a robe for the princess, in which the fairy arrayed her. It was of green and gold brocade, embroidered with pearls and rubies, and her long golden hair was tied back with strings of diamonds and emeralds, and crowned with flowers. The fairy made her mount beside her in the golden chariot, and took her on board the admiral's ship, where she bade her farewell, sending many messages of friendship to the queen, and bidding the princess tell her that she was the 5th fairy who had attended the christening. Then salutes were fired, the fleet weighed anchor, and very soon they reached the port. Here the king and queen were waiting, and they received the princess with such joy and kindness that she could not get a word in edgewise to say how sorry she was for having run away with such a very poor-spirited ambassador. But, after all, it must have been all Caraboss's fault, just as this lucky moment who should arrive but King Merlin's son, who had become uneasy at not receiving any news from his ambassador, and so had started himself with a magnificent escort of 1,000 horsemen and 30 bodyguards in gold and scarlet uniforms to see what could have happened. As he was 100 times handsomer and braver than the ambassador, the princess found she could like him very much. Like I said, that man was also the first man you had ever seen, so you're getting some, like, you thought he was so handsome, it's okay, you can meet other people first. There you go. So the wedding was held at once with so much splendor and rejoicing that all the previous misfortunes were quite forgotten. Well, that's good. Popcorn, you're into the story. I'm glad. I'm sorry that that's the end, though, because that is the end. I guess the princess had a better life with Merlin's son. And that's it. But glad to hear the ambassador did die. I'm glad that he, after his trying to kill her, died. Yes. If it hadn't been quite like that, I would have just said, "Glad you're gone." But falling asleep, Betster. All right. Chris, good news. I'm going to be uploading this onto YouTube, so you can have that. You can watch the full story soon. You have access to it. Just gonna write this down. Making sure I knew. There we go. Okay. So, Kyoko Coco. Alright, then we'll go there. I have to raid and run again. But everybody that wants to stick around for where we raid to, have fun. I'm going to move over to my ending screen. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good night, everybody. I'll be back up tomorrow, doing the same spooky read in my first stream, and then fairy tale read in the second. So I hope to see folks again tomorrow. But here we go. We're gonna raid into Kyoko Coco. They're having fun, I guess. And I'm gonna have to pop in and read. Oh, thank you for the subscription. Thank you for gifting that. We have to go, but thank you very much. Drop the money, frogs, whenever someone else is gifting things. That's what we do here. But okay, we're raiding now. Drop your messages when we get there. Here we go. We're raiding. All right.